Twilight Squabble is a game published by AEG earlier this year. It's a two-player game, and it's meant to take the entire Cold War and condense it down into 10 minutes. It's heavily influenced by GMT Games' Twilight Struggle. Except this one's a micro game?
In Twilight Squabble, you and another player take on the roles of the two main superpowers from the Cold War, the US and the USSR. Goal of the game is to keep the balance of power in your favor by the end of the 5th round. All while doing so, you don't want to pull too hard for the balance of power tug-of-war, because you'll probably start off a nuclear winter.
How does a game of Twilight Squabble work? Well, a game will consist of 5 hands with up to 5 cards. These cards you're always going to have, for the most part, the same cards. You're going to have a power 1 value card here, power there, and then with a counter value of 2 in the corner. You're going to have a power 2 card with a counter value 1, and then you're going to have a power 3 card with a counter value 3 in the corner. Those 3 cards you're going to have throughout every single round. No matter what. It's just going to happen. In your hand, you're also going to start off with 2 agent cards. You have your regular agent and your double agent. Regular agents allow you to see kind of what your opponent's up to, and the double agent counters agents. As we go about, we're going to be trying to shift the balance of power into our favor. And the way that we do that is by playing cards face down to one of these 2 locations. We have our balance of power space, and we have our space racetrack. After all players have played their cards face down simultaneously, we have the ability to modify that value.
Well, why? But first, how?
We have these little cubes here. These are called socioeconomic cubes, or stuff on the floor. What they do is they modify the value of the card that you play, either up +1 value if the number of cubes you place on a card is less than or greater than equal to the number of the power value on the card, or if the number of cubes on a card equals the power value of the card, that card's value is now worth 0. And that's okay, because you're not going to get those cubes right from the start. You're going to have to work up to them. And how do you work up to them? Well, you know how I said you're going to play 2 cards face down at a particular location, and they're going to do their thing? Well, if you don't play any agents, rather, any cards that you have left over in your hand that still have the power value there, they're going to get you that number of socioeconomic cubes at the end of your turn. So you can set yourself up for doing a big swing or a big undercut later on in the game. So at this point, we probably should go over what the agents do. Before socioeconomic cubes are placed on the locations, if anybody's played an agent, flat out, you reveal it. Agents do something pretty simple. They just flip over another player's card before everybody flips over. So that kind of gives the person playing the agent a little bit of a leeway into what his opponent's doing. And all agents are revealed and resolved at the same time. The double agent cancels another agent. So if you say, hey, my agent's going to flip over that card, you can just say, no. Why are power values so important? Well, to be frank, you need to have more power to have the balance of power in your favor, right? So, after everybody's played their card face down, if any agents are to be activated, they are flipped up and they do the thing, but all cards are flipped face up. And then we compare the power values in the corners here. We take into account the number of socioeconomic cubes placed on a card, and then we determine a winner. So a winner for a location is determined by the highest value between the number printed on the card or the number of cubes on the card. So like, for example, for this balance of power, or this space racetrack here, we've got a 3 value here with 2 socioeconomic cubes placed on it, bringing that total value up to 5. And on the other side, we have a power value card of 1 with nothing special added to it. So in this case, the Soviet player wins. Obviously, they have 5 greater than 1. So what they do is they win the space. They do whatever the space says. Let's swap these cards for a minute real quick. Because if they win at a space race track location, they just advance along the space race track and they get the ability. If they go over to the balance of power space, they still win, but you don't want to win too much. This game is an absolute tug of war, flat out, plain and simple. You're going to be wanting playing cards, getting the highest value, and moving this little track to your favor, but you don't want to move it too far, because then if you do, you're going to incite a little nuclear winter there, and then everybody, actually, if you pull it too hard, the opposing player loses instead of everybody loses to a nuke. And that's fine, and that's totally cool. So like for our example, there earlier we had a power value of 5 winning against a power value of 1. So this balance of power will shift in the winner's favor the difference between those two power values. So it would shift 4 into, what was that, Soviet side? So it'd be 1, 2, 3, oh, starting at 5, I can count, I promise. 1, 2, 3, 4. In that case, the Soviet player would literally lose, and that's no fun. So, after the cards have been revealed and all values have been decided and all that fun stuff, before the winner for each location is decided, that card that you have left over in your hand that you might want to save for socioeconomic cubes in the future, you can play it to a location. If that card has a counter value matching the power value of an opponent's played card. So, for example, this one can totally cancel out that card played at the space race track. Or, likewise, the 3 value can cancel out the other 3 values. So if he's played it and I haven't, bam, guess what? It does nothing. The 3 is wasted. Because after counter values are played, we decide who wins at each location of balance and power. All cards are wiped from the board, and we draw 3 new cards. This signifies the escalating conflict throughout the Cold War, except the cards that you're drawing are still the same. They're still the 1, 2, 3 with the same counter values of the 1 and the 2 and the 2 and the 1 and the 3 and the 3. And then you just do it again? All while keeping track of this invariable tug of war between 2 different superpowers that are kind of just recycling the same bits over and over, maybe getting a little bit of socioeconomic boosties to help them out, or maybe trick the other player into pulling a little bit too hard and thus inciting nuclear winter upon themselves. And then you do it again. So does that seem like a lot? It kind of should. All in all, before you determine the winner of a round, there are 10 phases in total if you're playing with all of the rules. And that seems like a lot because it is. And the reason being is because each different phase requires its own separate check, where it's checking to make sure something hasn't happened rather than has. It's kind of like you're driving on a freeway, right? You're going, and you're up to speed, and you gotta slow down for a checkpoint. A way station, what have you, or accident, whatever. You gotta stop for some reason. And you get past it, and you figure out, you resolve whatever issue it is. And then you get to going again, and you get up to speed, and then you have to slow down and stop again. But this time it's a different checkpoint for a different reason, but it's resolved just as easily, or rather isn't. And then you go again, and then there's one last checkpoint where maybe you're going to go to jail, but maybe not. There is a light at the end of this weird micro game tunnel thing. After you get a game or two going on, and you and another player knows inherently what is happening between you and the system and the cards itself, something interesting happens. Both players kind of just shut up. You kind of play a little bit of a bluffing mind game, or at least you try to. And this whole bit of rock, paper, scissors, and control becomes a mind game. But everybody's just quiet, and you're just going through the motions, and you're trying to get into your opponent's head without saying anything. And that's interesting, because it kind of works. So as you're playing this mind game of, I'm going to play a card to trick you into playing another card, you're just entirely silent about it, you start to build up a sense of tension between the two players, and only in 10 minutes, which is kind of interesting. Except for the 10 minutes. It's kind of just like you're at a pool party and somebody might be talking about going into the pool, but they haven't decided one way or the other, and they're kind of a two-faced turd about it, and you might be going into the pool, but might not. Look, as we're playing, this game works. You and another player are going to realize that instead of just these cards that you're playing back and forth, you need to get into that mindset where you can try to trick the other player. So that's where this game works. This game doesn't work if the players don't want to do that. Much like some games are good with the right group. Werewolf, Resistance, Secret Hitler, to tie the dictator theme in. Each player has to be aware of what the game actually is and what it wants you to do. This game is... It's touted as being Twilight Struggle, ultra light. And I'm not quite sure if I'm okay with that, because this beast, this absolute mind-numbing, consuming thing that just hungers for your attention for 180 minutes to be distilled into 1/18 of that time, that's a massive feat. If we're comparing the two, and we really shouldn't be, but they want us to, we're going to do it. One, on Twilight Squabble, on the one hand, is a really super light card game with a very thin theme of the Cold War. While one is the best Cold War game I think there is, and that might just be on a technicality. But this game is amazing. 180 minutes. You've got so much control. You're taking moves that are going to hurt you, but maybe hurt you less than it's going to hurt the opponent. Look, the comparison here shouldn't exist, and it's kind of a shame that they make it exist. Even using the name and Twilight Squabble as a term injected a sort of confusion into my head, because I literally thought that this game was going to be a card game, much like Castles of Burgundy is now a card game. I was super excited for that, super excited for this to be a card game. And then I saw it was by AEG, and then I saw that it was 10 minutes, and then I kind of just gave up a little bit. So, I know I'm kind of ragging on Twilight Squabble quite a bit, and I can't tell if that's justified or not. On the one hand, there's not a lot to it. It's super light. It's got an even lighter theme, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. As long as the players agree into this bluffing and trick-taking-ish mindset, things will be all right. But there is one thing that I think is the best part of this entire game, and it's how they took the victory point system from Twilight Struggle and they put it onto a little itty-bitty card with what is that, 9 spaces? They condensed the massive, overwhelming tug-of-war to 9 spaces, where if you win too hard, you lose. And that's cool. That's awesome. I like that a lot. But that's my favorite part of the game. That I don't like so much. Another thing that I'm not a fan of is that it only seats 2 players, and that's understandable considering the theme. But if you want a little bit more action and you want it to actually play with other people and have a little bit more depth if you want, Empire Engine in this little teeny tiny sack here takes care of what this game is trying to do and does it amazingly well. We reviewed this back on our podcast, and at first we went into it absolutely hating it, but the thing with these square cards, they're so cool. Whatever one is facing up is the action that you do, and you turn it for your turn, and you can turn it as many turns, and whatever is facing up, you get to do a thing, and you can attack other people, and you can sell goods and collect goods and all that fun stuff. Plus, it's in a tiny little bag, all for the same price, $14.99 MSRP. If you buy from your favorite local game store, as you should. So, what do we think of Twilight Squabble? Well, it's pretty hard to nail down. Here at Cards and Shit, we have a rating system of bring the game to a game night, I'll play the game at a game night, I'll pass at a game night, or I'll just try to recommend it to anybody that I see. It's really hard for us to put this in a category for a few reasons. Let's go over them real quick. Well, first things first, my group won't play this anymore. I've gone through everybody. I've made everyone in our review group play this at least 10 times, and that's not a very large feat, admittedly, but it's enough to understand that this isn't for our group, for the reasons I mentioned before. The other bit, the parts that I like. I love the balance of power. I love how the agents work. But I think where this falls apart is the need to be its big brother here. It wants to be this behemoth. Rather not verbatim, but in a more condensed and accessible fashion. And it doesn't quite do that. And I think that labeling it as the entire Cold War in 10 minutes does it a huge disservice. So much so that if it had a different theme, I think I might like it. It's gotten to the point with our group where I would rather teach Twilight Struggle to a gran than play this ever again. Take that as you will. I understand fully that this is not a game for me or my group. But I can't really recommend a group that this would be for. I don't even want to bring this out to somebody who just graduated off a Ticket to Ride, because they're going to look at it and they're going to be, is that it? Even coming from Ticket to Ride, and that's probably an unfair comparison, and if it is, I genuinely apologize. But if it makes me want to consume an entire afternoon with its big brother, there's not much that I can do. Hey, Grandma. It's me. It's your. No. Your grandson. No, your other grandson. Rue. It's Rue. Hey, listen. So I'm going to be in town, or rather up by the home later today, and I was wondering if you wanted to, I don't know, maybe play a board game for old time's sake. A new one that I picked up. Yeah. No. It's just like Monopoly. Yeah, absolutely, just like Monopoly. All right, yeah. No. I'll be there in a minute. Okay, bye. Love you, Gran.